And since we only have 30 minutes, we're going to jump in with the first question. And it is, what do you think is the #1 challenge facing the city, and how would you tackle it? And we're going to start with David Noblitt.
Well, thank you again to KOA and the Gazette for holding this. We greatly appreciate that. I believe that what we're addressing in so many instances across our city is the tremendous amount of growth that we're experiencing. And with that, I believe it's critically important that as counselors, we make sure that we move forward in a organized and considerate fashion in making sure that the resources that we have, both physical and natural, are going to be able to be maintained. And I truly have concerns about the explosion of growth that we have had. I believe that a lot of it has been kind of artificially incentivized. And to that point, I think we probably need to slow some of that incentivization down, as we have become, in fact, a destination. This is a great place to live. But we definitely need to make sure that we have the ability to take care of the citizens who are currently here, as well as those that are moving into our city. So we need to move forward in a calculated way to ensure that we maintain adequacy within both our natural and physical resources, such as public safety and impact of the infrastructure.
Great. Let's go on to David Geislinger.
Hi, I'm Dave Geislinger, and I've been district council for District 2 for the last 2 years. And I do thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. The biggest process still is Colorado Springs is growing up, and we're continuing to grow up. I ask you to remember from 10 years ago, the dysfunction of the city and how nobody wanted to come here and how we were a laughing stock. And over the course of the last 10 years, and certainly over the last 4 years, when you see the accolades that the city has received, government has been part of that. And we need to continue with the process of making a government that is responsive to 500,000 people, and each district 80,000 people. It's not representing one or the other. The region is going to continue to grow, and we have to recognize that growth is going to occur whether in the city or outside of the city. So I too am looking forward to sustainable growth, which includes affordable housing and addressing sustainability with our resources.
Thank you. We'll go on to Randy Helms.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you for allowing us to share our vision. Without a doubt, the #1 issue of not only Colorado Springs, but our nation is to recover from the COVID pandemic, both economically and our small businesses and health-wise. I am keenly aware of the impact that the pandemic has had on our small businesses, and we must help them to recover. The city has begun some of those things over the last year, the city sales tax holiday, but we must look forward to doing that again. We have to look at incentives. We have to look at reducing regulations, reducing red tape, reducing the fees for our small businesses. I'm closely associated with a small business owner, and he and I have been following what he's been going through for the last year. And it's clear that both the federal government, state, and the city have helped him out, but we got to continue to do that. I will be a team player on the city council with everyone. I must say that I'm a volunteer. My wife and I, we help out. This is an empty vial for the vaccine. I must stress the vaccine. So thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing other questions.
All right. Our next question, and by the way, we do want to remind everyone who's joining us online to use that Q&A function. We'd love to get to some constituent questions as well. So just type in whatever your question is in the Q&A function. This year, the City Council approved a decrease in the amount of parkland a developer is required to set aside for parks. Do you agree or disagree with the decision, and tell us why? And we will begin with Dave Geislinger.
Well, I have voted for it, and as I indicated, I want developers to provide 25 acres per instead of 7,500 of fully developed parkland. But the constitutional taking requirement, the Fifth Amendment analysis that was presented from the United States Supreme Court, essentially said that is stealing unless it is justified. And I couldn't justify stealing. I have also said that even though we can't steal parkland from developers, this is the year for Colorado Springs to develop a sustainable parkland policy. As the Supreme Court has said in these cases, it is up to the citizens and the city to do this. We have already enacted the process of doing that. I look forward this year to make this the year of the parks, where we have from the city a sustainable ability to maintain, procure, and develop parkland.
All right, and let's move on to Mr. Holmes.
Yes, I absolutely agree with the decision to reduce the amount of land from 7.5 acres per 1,000 residents to 5.5 acres to 1,000 residents. The reason for that is on the average, if you look at the research and history, the city has always been below the 7.5 acres, especially within the downtown area. So we're not really losing that amount of space to actually build our parks and open spaces. And I think it will go to help in our developers. Will actually, the ordinance and the bill makes it so that they pay more fees. So we'll be able to maintain them at a much better rate. So that's why I support that decision.
All right, we'll move on to Dave Noblitt now.
I'm going to have to disagree with my fellow candidates with that. I spent an incredible Saturday this last weekend watching my grandson and a couple hundred other kids out in the middle of a park trying to get outdoors and have the opportunity to spend time in what has been traditionally seen as one of the benefits of coming to Colorado Springs. And what we're talking about is the future here, not only as the development grows and we talk about this growth in our city, to reduce the parklands, to mitigate or to give back to developers basically a financial break to their advantage, while taking away from the future from our kids and for the opportunity for our citizens to get out and enjoy what Colorado Springs is all about, I believe is a move in the wrong direction. If we're going to make plans, we should make plans to continue on to support those initiatives that have benefited the city for so long. And the fact is that the dollars that are offset by the developers are simply going to be spent and gone. And in years to come, the kids won't have that opportunity to be able to get out and enjoy the times and the reasons why we love Colorado Springs. So I'm against reducing any kind of parkland.
Thanks. We're now going to take on some candidate specific questions. And these questions were inspired by a reader who wrote in about the campaign finance story that I wrote for the Gazette this last weekend. And we are going to start with Randy Helms on this question. Since you accepted campaign finance donations from Gary Erickson, who's a developer in town, how will you avoid conflict of interest when voting on his projects?
Absolutely. So to preface that, as people may know, HBA, the Housing Builders Association, did not endorse me. One of the reasons is they said, I care too much about the Air Force Academy and veterans. And Gary Erickson loves veterans. And so when the Housing Builders Association did not support me in that, Gary Erickson did. And we want to ensure affordable housing for our community. And that's one of the things that I really am pushing for, the incentives, but we want the right incentives. We want fair incentives. And that's what I pledge to do.
Thank you. We'll move on to David Noblitt with this next question. Since you received significant support from firefighters associations, how would you ensure that you avoid conflict of interest when voting on issues that might affect firefighters?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm proud to stand and say that I was actually endorsed by the men and women in blue who are part of public safety within not only our community, but within our state. And to that point, there's been accusations to the fact that the only reason that we're moving in this direction is to be able to give employees contracts. The voters overwhelmingly rejected that action within the last couple of years. And as I've stood by my candidacy in actually representing the people, my assurance is that that is not the case. And I will not initiate anything that would move in that direction. But it does speak to the fact that I don't have any developer money behind me. But the men and women who put their lives on the line every single day for the citizens that they're sworn to protect are the ones who are confidently standing behind me because they've seen the leadership that I've been involved in within those associations in moving things forward for not only the best interests of the firefighters, but of the citizens that we serve, to ensure that we can adequately protect and cover those citizens. As public safety has got to be the number one primary responsibility of government. So I'm proud to stand in front of those. And alongside that, the remainder of my donations have come from the individual small donations to support our candidacy. So I'm very proud to make sure to say that I'm not influenced by those.
Thank you. That's great. We're going to move on to Councilman Geislinger for this next question. Since you received significant campaign finance donations from developers, including the Housing and Building Association, how would you avoid conflict of interest when you vote on land use projects?
4 years ago, the HBA endorsed me, and 4 years ago, the HBA offered to give me the PAC money that they set aside for the same reasons. Because I said 4 years ago, affordable housing is going to destroy our economy. And right now, the Chamber and EDC say the issue of affordable housing is the number one obstacle to new companies coming into Colorado Springs. So that's still an issue. 4 years ago, I was running unopposed. So they offered me $5,000. My campaign was $49. And it was all self-funded because I didn't need to do this. I came in this year and I did not decide to run until after January. I had inquired to people about how do you run a campaign without money. Unfortunately, nobody responded on that, and not these candidates. By then, it was too late. Money had already been accumulated, and running a campaign is expensive. I will vote, as I have for the last 4 years, with integrity on my own principles, not for what people want, and they know that.
All right, we're going to move on to our rapid fire questions. So candidates, we ask that you respond with yes or no. And just for simplicity's sake, you don't need to wait for me to call on you, but we'll just go in the same order as far as Knoplet, Geislinger, and then Helms. All right, so first question, does the city need to invest more in public transportation?
No, I'm just going to pass on these. Thank you.
With limitations, yes.
Yes.
All right, do you support recreational marijuana sales?
Pass.
Oh, no.
No.
Is the city's investment in parks and open space adequate?
Pass.
With limitations, no.
Yes.
Should the city consider...
Mine was yes. You said adequate or inadequate?
Adequate, sorry.
Then the answer is no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Should the city consider a minimum wage increase to keep up with the cost of living?
Depending on the facts, possibly.
No. We're in a pandemic. No.
And do you support Springs Utilities' focus on renewable energy?
Pass.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and that concludes our rapid fire round.
Thank you. I know that those are tough. It's a tough thing to do, to say yes or no. So we do have some submitted questions now, and we're going to start with, how will you control accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals to prevent dilution of quality of life and safety of residents in our city? And I know that there has been some rules passed in this area recently, but if you would do more, you're welcome to address that. We're going to start with Dave Noblitt on this question.
Thank you. This is a really challenging issue between private property rights and the ability for our city to have some oversight within the impact to the neighborhoods that both of these items bring. My frustration with the ADUs is the fact that the premise was built or put into place to justify, again, affordable housing. And I don't believe that this is the offset or the resolution or the solution, I should say, to this problem. And so for that, I think the premise behind that is considerably flawed, and we should revisit that. As far as short-term rentals, I've seen the destructive nature of what this does to some of the neighborhoods, and we definitely have to have some oversight on that. I believe that personal property is definitely the ability for the owner to do as they wish. But as we're seeing corporations literally come in and purchase these properties for the sole intent of utilizing them as a commercial occupancy that's in the midst of a residential neighborhood, that shouldn't be allowed. And we definitely need to draw and rein that in so that the impacts to our neighborhoods are minimized.
Thank you. We'll go on to Councilman Geislinger.
They're two separate issues. ADUs, the wonderful thing is last Monday was the first ADU overlay approved by city on first reading in the Banning-Lewis area. New development, the developer says he wants to give the residential property residents the right to build ADUs if they want to for the purpose of affordable housing. And that's a good thing. City Council passed ADUs in existing zones, but only within the house itself, not within other houses. And that's a way that the owners of the house can continue to stay in the house and use it as a source of income, since it is their biggest asset. With regard to short-term rentals, we have put restrictions on short-term rentals in terms of people who can buy them, limiting the number of short-term rentals. We haven't had a lot of time yet to see what the impact of those regulations are, but we do need to aggressively conduct oversight and prohibit the use of short-term rentals where the owners are not responsible.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Randy Helms.
Personal property rights. That's what it's all about, being an American. We're here, we have the free market, so you own your property. The good thing about back in the summer, I think it was June, when passed the ADU ordinance, is that it brought with it strength and the ability to hold people accountable. And both for that and as a separate issue, as mentioned, on the short-term rentals. I'm on the HOA board here in my neighborhood, and we've experienced that. And what we were able to do is hold that owner accountable for what needed to be done, leaving the trash cans out past the time, not keeping the yard up to date, not taking the snow off the sidewalks. Those are the things that are addressed in the ordinances, and I fully support your private rights, your chance to have an ADU, and the potential to have short-term rentals. But I'm going to hold you accountable when I'm sitting in the seat. Thank you.
All right, certainly we are experiencing a lot of growth here. So what we'd like to know is, do you think the city should be managing Colorado Springs growth differently? And if so, what changes would you like to make? And we'll start with Dave Geislinger for this one.
Well, we are making changes. The city staff just enacted and is starting to use a new fiscal impact analysis. We have devised a new annexation policy in conjunction with the Colorado Springs utilities for a regional water sustainability. The fact of the matter, and through Colorado Springs utilities, we are adjusting tiered tap fee systems to incentivize infill development, because it's less expensive to hook up to existing utility infrastructure than it is to build new infrastructure in the greenfield area. What we have to recognize is that growth is not a city problem or a city challenge. It is a regional problem and a regional challenge, and we need to have growth by city standards and with hookups to city utilities so that we can prepare for the future. And we are doing that. We've done that over the last 2 to 3 years, and we're continuing to do that going forward.
All right, Randy Helms.
Positive growth is so important for our city, because we are going to grow, because we must ensure affordable housing for a vibrant workforce. That's what's important. And a vibrant workforce spurs economic development. Economic development creates growth. And the things that have been mentioned are absolutely a factor. Our water sources, our utilities. I know CSU has plans, 50 and 30-year plans for those. That's to anticipate the growth we're going to have over the next 30 to 50 years. It's so important that it's critical to keeping our workforce, our living here, the ability to afford a home, and multifamily housing is so important. We've got Retool COS, and we've got all these areas that we need to implement in a positive way, whether it's with the constituents having concerns about rezoning their area or a development that includes water and utility pieces. Thank you.
All right, and now Dave Noblitt.
I've lived in my district for almost 30 years, and since the northeast section of the town is one of the fastest growing within the city, I've heard from the constituents and the concerns that we have about our local growth. My concern is that as we continue to just gobble and annex these properties up, we're not taking the consideration into play of what that impact actually means to the residents that not only currently live in the district, but those new residents as well. If we don't adjust our way of doing business and the fact that as we attain the additional land, the resources that are necessary, again, both natural and physical, and the fact that we're seeing dual taxation rolls within these communities where the residents are paying upwards between $500 and $1,000 a year for taxation that they shouldn't be included in, because we're rapidly expanding without appropriate planning, and the plans that we have in place, in fact, we're not adhering to. So we need to definitely take a look and adhere to the plans that we've got on the books and take into consideration our constituents' concerns.
Thank you so much. We're gonna go on to a related question. How would you address the need for affordable housing in the city? And we're gonna start with Mr. Randy Helms on this question.
All right, as I mentioned, affordable housing is so important to our economy here. I think the average cost of a home here in Colorado Springs now has risen to $400,000. It's just incredible. The average employee can't do that. So how do we do that? How do we address those issues? Through incentives. We work together with the developed community, not only with incentives, but the right kind of incentives so that they're fair for everyone. Again, reducing regulations, the red tape. We need to work together, both with the city, the state, and in federal cases. Multifamily housing is so important to be able to expand. And there is a real problem in the legislature in Denver. For some reason, condos seem to be a real issue to be able to build here in Colorado Springs. But the multifamily housing can be done correctly when we look at the individuals in their communities and listen to them and do it correctly.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Mr. David Noblitt.
So I truly believe the fact that we've got a lot of great plans that are on the books right now. And again, a lot of the candidates have looked at the infill projects that are definitely a consideration. We do need to look at the addressing of the zone conditions that are within the city as far as the percentage of single family versus multifamily. What we don't want to have happen is for the zoning that are in the established neighborhoods to be converted over. We need to look at either commercial real estate that's being underutilized and maybe convert that over, or we definitely need to consider the master plan that we have in place. Again, we need to adhere to those things as we are exploding with rooftops and we're not following the plans that have been put into place. We need to understand that we need to slow our incentivization down. It's been part of the government's problem that got us to this point, to bring in all these companies without a consideration of where we're going to put these people. And it really does come down to a supply and demand. And we need to make sure that we allow those developers to have the opportunity to build without creating too much of an incentive that somebody else is going to have to pay for in the backside.
Thank you. On to Councilman Geislinger.
4 years ago, when I was quote unquote running, I was a lone wolf. And I said, affordable housing is going to be the issue. And over the course of the last 4 years, I have consistently said that, and it has now become the issue. As I indicated, the Chamber and EDC have indicated that it is the primary issue that is an obstacle for companies that are looking to move into Colorado Springs. It is the one issue that legitimately was used by the Air Force to say why Space Force shouldn't be located here. I'm proud to say that we have made many steps in the right direction and are utilizing funds and resources that we haven't before. I have 5 proposals. I want to get a specialist in city planning to assist in the construction of affordable housing. I want to develop a land bank in conjunction with the private sector, a seeding fund in conjunction with the private sector, do a full impact fee analysis at CSU and the city, and continue to promote infill and greenfield development because both are necessary to get us back to a sustainable housing system.
All right, thank you. We are actually going to move into the closing statement portion of today's forum. So candidates, as a reminder, you have 1 minute to give your final thoughts, and then we'll come back, leave some reminders for our voters out there and wrap things up. But we will begin with David Noblitt.
Thank you. Again, thank you to all of us to allow us this opportunity. I've lived in my district for almost 30 years. I've got 4 generations of family that are in this city. I've been in public safety and a public servant for 40 years, 25 of those years sworn to protect the citizens of Colorado Springs with and up to including my life. I'm passionate about taking care of a city that I've loved, that my family loves, that my kids and grandkids are here. I have great concerns in some of the issues that we see within my neighborhood as the Briargate Improvement District is struggling and has been for years and has not been corrected. The fact that we've put plans on the books for the benefit of our community, and yet we're not following those plans and allowing those that are kind of having roughshod over our community to make decisions that are going to negatively impact our community. I want to make sure that this city moves forward in the right way to take care of its citizens, to make sure that it's the best interest for all and that everybody has a voice to be heard in the decisions as we move forward.
All right, and Geislinger.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you, Dave, for bringing up the Briargate Improvement District. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the ballot initiative on this time because of voting requirements on the state level, but there is a ballot proposal that is coming to address the Briargate Special Improvement Maintenance District because I've been working with citizens communities for that 10,000 residential area and for the last 3 years, and we're going to get that addressed in November. I am a hospital chaplain. I have put my career as chaplain on hold in order to do this because as a hospital chaplain, as a man of faith, I recognize that I also needed to do this, and this is part of service as well. We are on the right track. We've accomplished much. We are looking forward, and I can't see Mary. I don't know how much time was left. Was that 15 seconds for wrap up? Anyway, it is a question of faith. It is a question of service. We are looking forward. We've accomplished much. We are in the shoes of General Palmer and Spencer Penrose, preparing not only for today, but for the future. And I look forward to doing that for the next 4 years.
All right, and we will end this with Mr. Holmes.
Thank you all so much. I want to let everyone know I want to continue to serve our community as I served our nation. I'm a proud graduate of your United States Air Force Academy, and I have over 40 years of leadership and management experience at the commanding officer, educator, and charitable organizational leader level. I'm a principle-driven conservative. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in accountability and fair taxpayer representation. I come from a family that served, and they inspired me to learn how to lead. In doing that, I earned my Eagle Scout Award, and that later helped me earn an appointment to the Academy, where I fell in love with Colorado Springs, and I fell in love with the young lady that I married at the Cadet Chapel. I'm endorsed by the Gazette, and they said I'm not the incumbent, and I'm endorsed by the Gazette, and I really appreciate that. I'm endorsed by others, and I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to serving as your council member.
All right, a big thank you to all of our candidates for participating today. And for all of you that are watching, if you know someone that lives in your neighborhood that maybe wasn't able to catch this, it will be available on KOAA and the Gazette's website. It'll also be available on our KOAA streaming platforms as well if you'd like to catch up on anything you may have missed today.
Yeah, thanks again to everybody who's joined us. This is a generalized reminder. If you haven't received your ballot in the mail, you should have. Please be in touch with the city clerk's office if you've not received it. There's also a full listing of ballot drop-off boxes on the city clerk's website. There will be one more forum that will air tomorrow at 12:30. If you have not sent in that will be with District 6, and you are welcome to send in your questions to either Allison or I for those candidates.